In 1991, buried under Canadian sandstone, paleontologists uncovered the largest Tyrannosaurus rex ever found, Scotty. To the world, his monstrous size was the story. But after headlines faded, a fractured rib told a different tale. Inside this 9.7-ton predator, scientists just uncovered blood vessels preserved for 66 million years, evidence that rewrites everything you learned about fossils and calls into question what museums are hiding. How did a lifetime of violence make the impossible possible, and what else are we missing under the bones? August 1991, a dry patch of Saskatchewan prairie. A crew of paleontologists led by Tim Tuckerick chipped away at stubborn rock, not knowing they had found a dinosaur that would redefine the species. The first hint was a weathered tail vertebra poking from the sandstone, but the real work was only beginning. Unlike the soft, loose soils that surrender fossils in weeks, this was an iron-hard matrix, sandstone compacted over millions of years, locking every bone in an unbreakable grip. Excavation was not a matter of months or even years. It took nearly 3 decades to free Scotty from his tomb. Field seasons in Saskatchewan are short. Winters hit early, and summer brings swarms of mosquitoes, sudden storms, and relentless heat. Each year, crews returned with chisels, rock saws, and patience, carving through stone inch by inch. Some days progress was measured in centimeters. The sandstone dulled blades and shattered jackhammer bits. Every rib, every vertebra had to be jacketed in plaster and burlap, then hauled out by hand or winched up steep outcrops. The field team faced setbacks that would have broken lesser crews. Heavy equipment bogged down in mud. Flash floods threatened to wash away months of work. At times it seemed the rock would never let go, but the promise of what lay inside kept them coming back, year after year, for 28 years. When the last block finally left the ground, the team raised a bottle of scotch in the wind, giving the skeleton its name, Scotty. Only then did the world learn of the giant sleeping beneath Saskatchewan. But before Scotty could make headlines, he was just a mystery locked in stone, a test of human grit and the patience of science. When Scotty's skeleton finally emerged from decades of rock, the numbers were impossible to ignore. 43 feet from nose to tail, longer than a city bus. An estimated body mass pushing 9.7 tons, outweighing any Tyrannosaurus ever measured. In 2019, paleontologists published their findings, and the headlines traveled fast. The world had a new heavyweight champion. For generations, Sioux at Chicago's Field Museum stood as the gold standard, just over 40 feet, tipping the scales at around 8.4 to 9 tons. But Scotty's measurements rewrote the record books. This was not a statistical tie. It was a clear victory, confirmed by the most rigorous methods in dinosaur science. The Royal Saskatchewan Museum wasted no time putting their prize on display. Visitors poured in, 500,000 a year, drawn by the promise of seeing the biggest predator to ever walk the planet. News crews lined up to film the unveiling. Kids pressed their faces to the glass, staring up at jaws as long as a grown man's arm. For older visitors, the experience felt almost unreal. All their lives, T-Rex meant Sioux. Now, the title belonged to a skeleton from the Canadian prairie, a fossil that had spent nearly 30 years hidden beneath layers of stone. Scotty became a celebrity overnight. His name appeared in newspapers from Toronto to Tokyo. Museum guides rattled off the numbers: 43 feet, 9.7 tons, more than 30 years old at death. Scientists fielded calls from journalists wanting to know how a dinosaur could get so big, how it could survive so long. But the attention was not just about size. There was something different about this skeleton. Something in the shape of the bones, the roughness of the surfaces, the way certain pieces fit together. As the crowds admired the giant mount, a handful of researchers began to ask new questions. What kind of life leaves a body so massive, yet so marked by struggle? What secrets were still hidden in Scotty's bones? Scotty's skeleton reads like a crime scene report. The lower jaw bears the scars of a long-fought infection, pitted bone and rough edges, a reminder of a wound that festered but never killed. Along the tail, a vertebra is torn and misshapen, the kind of injury that could only come from a violent twist or a crushing bite. The shoulder blade is splintered, its surface remodeled by new bone, evidence of a heavy impact that forced tissue to knit itself back together. Each wound tells its own story. A jaw infection that would have made eating agony, a torn tail vertebra that could have thrown off balance, a battered shoulder that hints at a collision or a desperate escape. Bite marks gouged into the bones match the teeth of another Tyrannosaurus, confirming Scotty clashed with his own kind. Some of these marks show signs of healing, bone growing over the punctures and sealing them off after the attacker had moved on. Others are fresher, their edges raw and unhealed. The injuries stack up: broken ribs, gouged vertebrae, shattered scapula, each one a record of a fight survived or a blow endured. Over a lifespan stretching more than 30 years, Scotty's body absorbed punishment that would have ended most animals. The skeleton stands as a catalog of violence, every scar and fracture a clue to a life spent at the top of a brutal food chain. Yet, among this gallery of trauma, one rib stands out, not for the force that broke it, but for what it managed to preserve. One rib on Scotty's left side stands apart from the rest, thicker, rougher, and etched with the unmistakable signs of healing. This was not a clean break. The bone surface is woven and lumpy, a patchwork of new growth that only forms when an animal survives a devastating injury. In living creatures, a fracture like this triggers a biological emergency. Blood rushes to the site, carrying cells and minerals that begin to knit the bone back together. The body lays down a scaffold of spongy, woven bone, riddled with microscopic channels for blood vessels and nerves. Over weeks or months, this temporary structure is slowly replaced by denser, permanent bone. But in Scotty's case, the process was interrupted. The fracture had started to heal, enough to leave a thick rim of repair tissue, but death arrived before the job was finished. This rib records the final chapter of a violent life. The fresh bone tells us Scotty survived the injury for some time, living through pain that would cripple most animals. Every breath would have sent a jolt through the cracked rib, yet the healing continued, layer by layer. That moment, caught between trauma and recovery, turned this rib into something more than just a scar. It became a biological time capsule, locking in the evidence of the body's desperate attempt to repair itself. Scientists noticed the unusual texture right away, but it would take advanced imaging to reveal what lay hidden inside, a record of blood, healing, and the chemistry of survival, all preserved in stone. Jarrett Mitchell first noticed the oddity in 2019, running a micro-CT scan of Scotty's battered rib. The images showed something unexpected: tiny branching hollows winding through the repair zone, too organized for random cracks. At first, the team flagged it as a curiosity, a footnote in the long catalog of Scotty's injuries. But the regularity of the pattern lingered in Mitchell's mind. He brought the images to Mauricio Barbi, a physicist at the University of Regina, who had spent years pushing the limits of non-destructive fossil imaging. Barbi recognized the potential immediately. If these channels really were ancient blood vessels, they would need proof beyond anything a micro-CT could provide. The next step meant securing precious beam time at the Canadian Light Source, one of the world's most powerful synchrotron facilities. Unlike conventional X-rays, a synchrotron generates a focused, high-intensity beam of light, millions of times brighter than the sun, capable of mapping the internal chemistry of a fossil at the micron scale. The team prepared a small, unbroken section of the rib, careful to avoid damaging any of the healing bone. Every move was documented, every sample logged. The protocol called for scanning at multiple energies to distinguish bone, mineral infill, and any iron-rich features that might betray the presence of preserved tissue. Inside the beamline hutch, the rib section was rotated and scanned from hundreds of angles. Detectors captured the resulting data, building a three-dimensional map of the fracture zone layer by layer. The process took days, with each scan producing terabytes of raw information. Back in the lab, Mitchell and Barbi sifted through the data, searching for patterns that matched living anatomy. What they found would soon upend decades of assumptions about what a dinosaur bone could hide. The evidence was not just visible, it was quantifiable, repeatable, and impossible to ignore. Inside Scotty's fractured rib, synchrotron imaging revealed what standard X-rays could never catch: a network of hollow tubes winding and branching with the precision of living anatomy. These were not random cracks or mineral veins. Each channel matched the size and pattern of blood vessels in modern animals, splitting, narrowing, and weaving through the healing bone like a road map frozen in time. The images showed two distinct layers. Closest to the hollow core sat a dense band of iron-rich mineral perfectly lining the vessel's original diameter. Wrapped around that, a second layer marked where minerals from the surrounding rock seeped in much later, encasing the biological structure like a rind. The boundary between these layers is sharp, not blurred. That is the signature of something formed inside a living body, not a product of groundwater or chance. The chemistry behind this preservation is as remarkable as the structures themselves. When a bone breaks, blood floods the site, carrying hemoglobin loaded with iron. As the body tries to heal, that iron seeps out, saturating the tissue and triggering a cascade of chemical reactions. Free radicals form, cross-linking proteins in the vessel walls, much like formaldehyde locks down a specimen in a jar. Iron acts as a fixative, binding molecules together and making them nearly immune to decay. Over time, as the bone fossilizes, the original vessels become mineralized casts, but the iron-rich layer stays true to the vessel's shape and size. Even after 66 million years, the branching network remains, unmistakable against the background of fossilized bone. No random process can fake this kind of biological order. The branching architecture, the sharp transition between iron and stone, the dense, remodeled bone around the vessels, every detail points to a living origin. Scotty's rib is more than a broken bone. It is a chemical time capsule, preserving the aftermath of injury and the machinery of healing in a way that stone alone never could. The impossible has become visible, and the evidence is locked in iron for anyone willing to look. Behind the glass at the Royal Saskatchewan Museum, Scotty stands as the centerpiece, drawing 500,000 visitors a year. Yet the gallery label beneath those massive bones still reads like it did in 2019, the world's largest T-Rex, discovered after nearly 3 decades in stone, a survivor of ancient battles. Nowhere does it mention the preserved blood vessels found in his fractured rib, or the revolution in dinosaur science unfolding just a few floors above. For museum staff, updating a headline exhibit is not as simple as swapping out a sign. Every change must pass through committees, be approved by curators, and fit within a budget already stretched thin by conservation costs. Even a new display panel can run into thousands of dollars, money that often goes to climate control, security, or routine maintenance. The risk of damaging a specimen like Scotty makes any destructive testing a last resort, especially when the original bones are irreplaceable. Curators weigh the value of new discoveries against the possibility of permanent loss. For now, the story most visitors hear is the one that is safe, familiar, and easy to maintain, a record-breaking predator, not a scientific paradox. Behind the scenes, researchers press for more testing and updated displays, but the pace of change is slow. The science races ahead, while the story in the gallery lags behind. How many more breakthroughs are waiting in storage rooms, overlooked because museums cannot afford to update the truth on display? Mary Schweitzer's discovery of soft tissue in a Montana T-Rex in 2005 was met with disbelief and, for years, open hostility. Critics dismissed her results as contamination, artifact, or wishful thinking. Grants dried up, colleagues distanced themselves, and the idea that proteins or blood vessels could survive for millions of years became a scientific taboo. Scotty's rib, studied by a different team in a different country with a different technology, now shows the same unmistakable pattern: branching vessels, iron-rich mineralization, and biological order impossible to fake. This is vindication. The evidence does not stop with 2 dinosaurs. Hadrosaurs, Chinese feathered fossils, and even some ancient crocodiles have yielded traces of preserved tissue when researchers dared to look. The pattern is widening, not shrinking. But here is the uncomfortable reality. For every specimen tested, there are hundreds more sitting untouched in museum collections. Sue's shattered leg at the Field Museum, Jane's wounded jaw at the Burpee Museum. The fighting dinosaurs block in Mongolia, locked in combat and never sampled for vessels. Thousands of bones with fractures, infections, or battle scars are displayed in glass cases or stored in back rooms, their secrets sealed by caution and lack of funding. The pattern is clear: where injuries healed, soft tissue is most likely to survive. Yet the world's great museums have no coordinated effort to scan, sample, or even inventory these time capsules. There is no standardized protocol, no pooled funding, no organized survey. The question hangs in the air: what else are we missing by not looking? Today, museum shelves worldwide may hold fossils with secrets still sealed inside, evidence that soft tissue survival is far more common than textbooks admit. As technology advances, every untested bone is a missed chance to rewrite what we know about life, death, and time itself. The real story isn't buried in stone, it's waiting in plain sight. How long will we keep looking the other way?